Hello there, this is S Solution. Welcome to my channel. We're on the JavaScript series now, and we're learning the basics of JavaScript that will help us in understanding better how to solve algorithms. If you're interested in such things, please make sure to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get into the video. Now, in the last video, we spoke about data types. One of the data types we spoke about, we just mentioned it, was the arrays. But in this video, we'll be going deeply into what arrays are and how to use arrays and why arrays are important. Now, what is an array is the question. What is an array? An array is a collection of different items put together. So an array is not just like an integer, like a number that is just a number, one number. An array could be a collection of many numbers. An array could be a collection of many strings. An array could be a collection of many boolean. That is what an array is. So it's a collection of different items. So imagine we have a big long container. Now inside that big long container, we have now divided it into equal spaces, like in a chain, such that there's an item in the first box, another in the second box, but all the boxes actually are in one big container. So that's a brief explanation of what an array looks like. So now Java is so if I were to show you, so this is how an array looks like. So we have a big box here. Imagine this is a big box and it's divided into different. So you see, so we have something here, we have another here, we have another here, we have another here, we have another item here. So this is how an array looks like. An array is just like, it's a long box divided into different segments. So we have an item A in this segment, we have another item B in this segment, we have an item C in this segment, we have an item D in this segment, we have an item E in this segment, we have an item F in this segment. So we find out that in an array, you can put it that it's just like a big box with smaller compartments within it. So basically, that's what an array is. Yeah. So an array JavaScript can contain different items with different data types within it. Now, what does that mean? I will explain that, but before let me just go on to show us how we can set up an array, and then we'll go back to that. So there are two ways to set up an array. One is using the array literals, and the other is using the array constructors. Now I will show that with examples here. So you see, in the first example here, we're setting up this array, and we're using, this is what we call an array literal. Once you see a square bracket, open and closing a square bracket in JavaScript, that is an array. While another way to set up an array is by using the new keyword. So new array. So we're saying create a new array with size of 4. So basically what this will do is, or let me just show us. So if you look at another array, you see it creates 4 spaces. So one item is here, another is here, another is here, another is here. That's what this does, because you've told it you want 4 items. So if I were to come and I did, so we'll just see, you see, I'm saying fill it with 0. So you see item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. So this is another way to set up an array. So you don't need to fill it. I just wanted to, 4 items is signified by this 4. the new array creates an empty array of size 4. While using an array literal like this, you just set up an empty array, and you could also, in the same way, just put items here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's fine. Or you could start it off empty. That's also fine. So now the way array works is such that they can contain different items. So for instance, the first item can be a number, while the second one is a string, and the third is a boolean, and the fourth is another boolean, and we can have another string. So basically an array can be a collection of different data types in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, it doesn't matter. Once it's a data type, it can fall in here. An array can also contain an object, but we have not spoken on object, so we'll look at that in future. So an array can contain an object too. It can be an array of objects. So an array is basically whatever in JavaScript, whatever starts with a square bracket and ends within the square bracket. That is the content of the array, or when you use the new keyword to start it up. So there are two ways to set it up. The array literals, you put your square bracket at the beginning and at the end, and then we have our content within it. Or we can use the array construct, which will set up the array of size n. Now, how do we access the data in an array? So, in an array contains item 1, item 2, item 3, and so on and so on. So let me just show us that now. So let's say an array. So you see an array contains 1, 2, false, 2, and 5. It contains 5 items here. So item 1 is 1, item 2 is 2, item 3 is false, item 4 is true, and item 5 is 5. That's what the array is, an array is. Now, how do I get an item in an array? So I want to get the first item. How do I get it? In JavaScript, the way the items are positioned is this. So let's say we have now for this our example, this is item 1, is the position is position 1. So the items are positioned like this. The way an array is, the first item, so if I were to bring it back to our initial example here, let me just copy this, put it side by side, so in JavaScript, our item, this is how it is. So the first item, let me remove this. So the first item is position 0. Item B is in position 1. Item C is in position 2. Item D is in position 3, and the last item is position 4. So the way we get items in JavaScript is by specifying the position of that item. Now, so if we want to get whatever is in position C, we know it's item 2 we are talking about. And when we want what is in E, we know it's position 4 we are talking about. So you'll find out that in an array, if I want to get whatever is in item 1, if I want to get the first item, I have to do an array position 1. If I could show what item 1 is now, you see item 1 is what? Is 2, because we are going to location 1, and this is location 0, this is location 1. So location 1 is 2. Now, if you want to get the last of that is item 4, you see location 1, location 0, location 1, location 2, location 3, and so this is location 4, which is what? 5. Okay, let's say I put a location that doesn't exist. Let's say I put 7. You see, in JavaScript it gives you undefined because that item doesn't exist yet. So, but if for whatever I come here and I this look 4 above, it should be 7. So you see, it gives us that item because item in location 7 now exists. Don't forget it is 0 based. It starts from 0, and so this is 7 items. So basically it means there are 8 items here. So 8 items, but it begins from position 0. So the last item will be position 7. So it means that the length, it means that the last item, let's call it let item last, will always be an array of the length. For in this one, the length is 8 minus 1. That will always be what the last item is. It's always the length. So in this situation, the length is what? 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 items. 8 items minus 1 because we remember we're starting from 0. And that will give us, so let's check what is our item last. Item last is what? Is 3. That will be the last item. But this is important. In JavaScript, there is this important, which is called to get the length. So that array dot length. So in place of this, if I come, the problem of making it 8 is that if I can come and if I add something here, it's no more the last item. I have to update this to 9 minus 1. How do I always keep track of the length? So that is where this comes in play. An array dot length. So it will get the length. So as I added an item, it became 9. The length is now 9. If you remove 1, it becomes 8. So position 8 is now what? Something. If I come and I add something else, another thing, I add something else, you see, it has updated it to another thing. So the last item will always be the length of that item, but removing 1. So you remove 1 from the length of the array to get the position of that last item. So that's basically how to access data, how to retrieve your data from within your array. I hope that is so. The array is a 0 index based. So it means that item 1 is in position 0, as I said. Item 2 is in position 1. The item 3 is in position 2, and it goes on like that. And that will mean that the last item in an array is in the position of the total items minus 1. So items which are in an array are accessed based on the position of the item, as I showed us. So item 1 will be in position 0. So you go to that array in the position 0. And it's very important you put this in a square bracket. It has to be a square bracket. So an array, square bracket, and you put the position. Okay. So we have some common functions. We'll talk about functions later in JavaScript, but because we're talking about arrays, and this, when it comes to algorithm, when it comes to data structures, when it comes to solving questions like this with JavaScript, these are important functions that we will use over and over and over. And it is important we see them, even we don't understand them fully, we see them play out, and we know that these are functions that deal basically with arrays. So the first one is push. So if I come, and this is our array, and array is our, if I said push and I push and I push final thing, if I will show you what an array is now, you see. Okay, let me just remove something. Coca can only show 10 items at once without console logging. So an array, you see, the last item now is final thing. If I were to come and show us before we did this, what is an array? So before we did this, you notice an array was 1, 2, false, true, everything was the same up to another thing. Another thing was the last item. So what push does is that it adds whatever you are pushing into the back here. So it will come here and add it to the back here. That is what push will do. Now An array.pop, what this does now is the opposite of push. So you see, we had 1, 2, 4 up to another thing. What pop does is it removes the last item. So the last item, if you look at here, is no more there. It's because what pop does is that it removes the item. So if I say let item it equals to this, if I show you what the content of it will be, that last item that it removed. So it removes the last item and gives you whatever that last item is. So another thing is what it removes it, and it becomes that. Meanwhile, in our array, it's no more there. That is pop. Now we also have the shift. So what shift does is the opposite of pop. So if you look, pop will remove from the back. What shift will do is it will remove it from the front. So it's like you're shifting it away. So it removes it from the front. So if I were to show you, also let it is equal to this, and it, you see it is 1 because the first item here is what? Is 1, and it's removed from the array. So that is also. Now finally, we have in the unshift. Unshift is the opposite of push. When you are dealing with push we add it to the back. What unshift we do is we add it to the front. So let's say what I wanted to add to the front was 0. So you see 0 is now added at the front, while if I use push, it will add it to the back. There are times you will need to add an item at the back. There are times you need an item to the front. These are important functions that we should keep in mind. Okay. Now we have the map, we have the for each, and we have the join. I will not want to dwell too much on this. We will talk about this practically. What map will do is it will go through all the items, and whatever, when you want to do some computation, it will return some values. I don't want to go into that. It's a little bit. I want us to go into functions and all of that, and when we start solving algorithms, we can see that play out better. The for each is also like map, except that it doesn't expect you to return something. We will speak about all of that. While join is an interesting, it will join whatever is in there. Okay, I think we could do that. So if I were to come and show you, if I said an array, if I say join, now if I show you what S is, so you see that what join does is it add all the items together into one thing. So for instance, you see 1, but what they used to add them is whatever is here. So it's adding it with this arrowhead here. So 1 arrowhead, the second item 2 arrowhead. So it puts this arrowhead between every item, between every item. So you find that S is 1 arrow 2 arrow 4 arrow 2 arrow 5 arrow 5 arrow 7 arrow 3 arrow another thing, because we are joining it by this. If I were to change this to comma, you find out that it will join them by a comma. If I join it by space, by empty, by nothing, it will just join them all together there. If I put it by space, it joins it by space. So this is important. There are times you want to change your array back to a string, and there are times you want to use it as output as a string instead of an array. You could just use .join, and what we will do, it will bring it back to you for you as one string and not as an array. It's a very useful tip and trick in JavaScript. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section, and I'll try to respond as soon as possible. And do not forget,